Mother Wolf threw herself down, panting among the cubs. And Father Wolf said to her gravely, Shere Khan speaks this much truth. The cub must be shown to the pack. Wilt thou still keep him, mother? Keep him? They gasped. He came naked, by night, alone and very hungry. Yet he was not afraid. Look, he has pushed one of my babes to one side already, and that lame butcher would have killed him and would have run off with the Wangunga while the villagers were hunting through our lairs in revenge. Keep him? Assuredly I will keep him. Lie still, little frog. O thou Mowgli, for Mowgli the frog, I will call thee. The time will come when thou wilt hunt Shere Khan, as he has hunted thee. But what will our pack say? Said Father Wolf. The law of the jungle lays down very clearly that any wolf may, when he marries, withdraw from the pack he belongs to. But as soon as his cubs are old enough to stand on their feet, he must bring them to the pack council, which is generally held once a month at full moon, in order that the other wolves may identify them. After that inspection, the cubs are free to run where they please, and until they have killed their first buck, no excuse is accepted if a grown wolf of the pack kills one of them. The punishment is death, where the murderer can be found, and if you think for a minute, you will see that this must be so. Father Wolf waited till his cubs could run a little, and then on the night of the pack meeting took them and Mowgli and Mother Wolf to the council rock, a hilltop covered with stones and boulders where 100 wolves would hide. Akela, the great grey lone wolf, who led all the pack by strength and cunning, lay out at full length on his rock, and below him sat 40 or more wolves of every size and colour, from badger-coloured veterans who could handle a buck alone, to young black 3-year-olds who thought they could. The lone wolf had led them for a year now. He had fallen twice into a wolf trap in his youth, and once he had been beaten and left for dead. So knew the manners and customs of men. There was very little talking at the rock. The cubs tumbled over each other in the centre of the circle where their mothers and fathers sat, and now and again a senior wolf would go quietly up to a cub, look at him carefully, and return to his place of noiseless feet. Sometimes a mother would push a cub far out into the moonlight to be sure that he had not been overlooked. Akela from his rock would cry, Ye know the law! Ye know the law! Look well, O wolves! And the anxious mothers would take up the call, Look well, O wolves! At last, mother's wolf neck bristles lifted. The time came. Father Wolf pushed Mowgli the frog, as they called him, into the centre, where he sat laughing and playing with some pebbles that glistened in the moonlight. Akela never raised his head from the paws, but went on with a monotonous cry. Look well! A muffled roar came up from the rocks, the voice of Shere Khan crying, The cub is mine! Give him to me! What have the people to do with a man's cub? Akela never twitched his ears. All he said was, Look well, O wolves! What have the free people to do with the orders of any save free people? Look well! There was a chorus of deep growls, and a young wolf in his 4th year flung back Shere Khan's question to Akela. What have the free people to do with a man's cub? Now, the law of the jungle lays down that if there is any dispute as to the right of a cub to be accepted by the pack, he must be spoken for by at least 2 members of the pack, who are not his father and mother. Who speaks for the cub? Said Akela. Among the free people, who speaks? There was no answer, and Mother Wolf got ready for what she knew would be her last fight, if things came to fighting. Then, the only other creature who was allowed at the pack council, Baloo, the sleepy brown bear, who teaches wolf cubs the law of the jungle, old Baloo, who can come and go wherever he pleases because he only eats nuts and roots and honey, rose up on his high quarters and grunted. The man's cub, he said. I speak for the man's cub. There is no harm in a man's cub. I have no gift of words, but I shall speak the truth. Let him run with the pack and be entered with the others. I myself will teach him. We need yet another, said Akela. Baloo has spoken, and he is our teacher for the young cubs. Who speaks beside Baloo? A black shadow dropped down into the circle. It was Bagheera, the Black Panther, inky black all over, but with the panther markings showing up in certain lights like a pattern of watered silk. Everybody knew Bagheera, and nobody cared to cross his path, for he was as cunning as Sabaki, as bold as a wild buffalo, and as reckless as a wounded elephant. But he had a voice as soft as wild honey dripping from a tree, and skin softer than down. O Akela, the ye of free people, he purred. I have no right to join your assembly, but on the law of the jungle says that there is a doubt which is not a killing matter in regard to a new cub. The life of that cub may be bought at a price, and the law does not say who may or may not pay the price. Am I right? Good, good, said the young wolves, who were always hungry. Listen to Bagheera. The cub can be bought for a price. It is the law. Knowing that I have no right to speak here, I ask your leave. Speak then, cried 20 voices. To kill a naked cub is shame. Besides, he may make better sport for you when he is grown. Baloo has spoken on his behalf. Now to Baloo's word I will add 1 bull and a fat one, newly killed, not half a mile from here. If ye accept the man's cub according to the law, is it difficult? There was a clamor of scores of voices saying, What's the matter? He will die in the winter rains. He will scorch in the sun. What harm can a naked frog do us? Let him run with the pack. Where is the bull, Bagheera? Let him be accepted. And then came Akela's deep bay crying, Look well, O wolves! Mowgli was still deeply interested in the pebbles, and did not notice when the wolves came and looked at him one by one. At last they all went down the hill for the dead bull, and only Akela, Bagheera, Baloo, and Mowgli's own wolves were left. Shere Khan roared still in the night, for he was angry that Mowgli had not been handed over to him. I roar well, said Bagheera under his whiskers, for the time comes when this naked thing will make thee roar to another tune, or I know nothing of man. It was all well done, said Akela. Men and their cubs are very wise. He may be help in time. Truly, a help in time of need, for none can hope to lead the pack forever, said Bagheera. Akela said nothing. He was thinking of the time that comes to every leader of every pack when his strength goes from him and he gets feebler and feebler, till at last he is killed by the wolves and a new leader comes up to be killed in his turn. Take him away, he said to Father Wolf, and train him as befits of one of the free people. And that is how Mowgli was entered to the Seon wolf pack, for the price of a bull and on Baloo's good word. Now, you must be content to skip 10 or 11 whole years and only guess at all the wonderful life that Mowgli led among the wolves, because if it were written out, would fill so many books. He grew up with the cubs, though they, of course, were grown wolves before he was a child, and Father Wolf taught him his business, and the meaning of things in the jungle, till every rustle in the grass, every breath of the warm night air, every note of the owls above his head, every scratch of a bat's claw as it roosted for a while in a tree, and every splash of every little fish jumping in a pool, meant just as much to him as the work of his office means to a businessman. When he was not learning, he was sat out in the sun and slept, and ate, and went to sleep again. When he felt dirty or hot, he swam in the forest pools. And when he wanted honey, Baloo told him that honey and nuts were just as pleasant to eat as raw meat. He climbed up for it, and that Bagheera showed him how to do. Bagheera would lie out on a branch and call, Come along, little brother! And at first Mowgli would cling like a sloth, but afterwards he would fling himself through the branches almost as boldly as the grey ape. He took his place at the council rock too, when the pack met, and there he discovered that if he stared hard at any wolf, the wolf would be forced to drop his eyes, and so he used to stare for fun. At other times, he would pick the long thorns out of the pads of his friends, for wolves suffered terribly from thorns and burrs in their coats. He would go down the hillside into the cultivated lands by night, and look very curiously at the villagers in their huts. But he had mistrust of men, because Bagheera showed him a square box with a drop gate so cunningly hidden in the jungle that he nearly walked into it, and told him that it was a trap. He loved better than anything else to go with Bagheera into the dark, warm heart of the forest, to sleep all through the drowsy day, and at night to see how Bagheera did his killing. Bagheera killed right and left as he felt hungry, and so did Mowgli. With one exception. As soon as he was old enough to understand things, Bagheera told him that he must never touch cattle, because he had been bought into the pack at the price of a bull's life. All this jungle is thine, said Bagheera, and thou canst kill everything that thou art strong enough to kill. But for the sake of the bull that bought thee, thou must never kill or eat any cattle young or old. That is the law of the jungle. Mowgli obeyed faithfully. As he grew and grew strong, as a boy must grow, who does not know that he is learning any lessons, and who has nothing in the world to think of except to eat. Mother Wolf told him once or twice that Shere Khan was not a creature to be trusted, and that some day he must kill Shere Khan. But though a young wolf would have remembered that advice every hour, Mowgli forgot it, because he was only a boy. Though he would have called himself a wolf if he had been able to speak in any human tongue. Shere Khan was always crossing his path in the jungle, for as Akela grew older and feebler, the lame tiger had come to be great friends with the younger wolves of the pack, who followed him for scraps, a thing Akela would never have allowed if he had dared to push his authority to the proper bounds. Then Shere Khan would flatter them and wonder that such fine young hunters were content to be led by a dying wolf and a man's cub. They tell me, Shere Khan would say, that a counsel ye dare not look him between the eyes. And the young wolves would growl and bristle. Bagheera, who had eyes and ears everywhere, knew something of this, and once or twice he told Mowgli in so many words that Shere Khan would kill him some day. And Mowgli would laugh and answer, "Ha ha! I have the pack, I have thee, and Baloo, though he is so lazy, might strike a blow or two for my sake. Why should I be afraid?" It was one very warm day that a new notion came to Bagheera, born of something that he had heard. Perhaps Ikki the porcupine had told him. But he said to Mowgli, when they were deep in the jungle, as the boy lay with his head on Bagheera's beautiful black skin, "Little brother, how often have I told thee that Shere Khan is thy enemy?" "As many times as there is nuts on the palm," said Mowgli, who naturally could not count. "What of it? I am sleepy, Bagheera, and Shere Khan is all long turn and loud talk, like Mao the peacock. But this is no time for sleeping. Baloo knows it. I know it. The pack know it. Even the foolish deer know it. Tabaqui has told thee too." "Ho, ho!" said Mowgli. "Tabaqui came to me not long ago with some rude talk that I was a naked man's cub and not fit for pig nuts. But I caught Tabaqui by the tail and swung him twice against the palm tree to teach him better manners. That was foolishness, for though Tabaqui is a mischief maker, he would have told thee of something that concerned thee closely. Open those eyes, little brother. Shere Khan dare not kill thee in jungle. But remember, Akela is very old, and soon the day comes when he cannot kill his buck. And then he will be leader no more. Many of the wolves that looked thee when thou wast brought to the council first are old too, and the young wolves believe, as Shere Khan has taught them, that a man cub has no place with the pack. In a little time thou wilt be a man." "And what is a man that he should not run with his brothers?" said Mowgli. "I was born in the jungle. I have obeyed the law of the jungle, and there is no wolf of ours from whose paws I have not pulled a thorn. Surely they are my brothers." Bagheera stretched himself at full length and half shut his eyes. "Little brother," he said, "feel under my jaw." Mowgli put his strong brown hand, and just under Bagheera's silky chin there was a giant rolling muscle, but all hid by the glossy hair. He came upon a little bald spot. "There is no one in the jungle that knows that I, Bagheera, carry that mark, the mark of a collar. And yet, little brother, I was born among men, and it was among men that my mother died. in the cages of the king's palace at Udaipur. It was because of this that I paid the price for thee at the council, when thou was a little naked cub. Yes, I too was born among men. I had never seen the jungle. They fed me from behind bars and from an iron pan till one night I felt that I was Bagheera, the panther, and no man's plaything. And I broke the silly lock with one blow of my paw and came away. And because I had learned the ways of men, I became more terrible in the jungle than Shere Khan. Is it not so? Yes, said Mowgli. All the jungle fear Bagheera, all except Mowgli. Oh, thou art a man's cub, said Black Panther very tenderly. And even as I return to my jungle, so thou must go back to men at last, to the men who are thy brothers, if thou art not killed in the council. But why? But why should any wish to kill me? Said Mowgli. Look at me, said Bagheera, and Mowgli looked at him steadily between the eyes. The big panther turned his head away in half a minute. That is why, he said, shifting his paw on the leaves. Not even I can look thee between the eyes, and I was born among men. I love thee, little brother. The others, they hate thee because their eyes cannot meet thine, because thou art wise, because thou hast pulled the thorns from their feet, because thou art a man. I did not know these things, said Mowgli sullenly, and he frowned under his heavy black eyebrows. What is the law of the jungle? Strike first and then give tongue. But thou very careless. That thou art a man. But be wise. It is in my heart that when Akela misses his next kill, and at each hunt it costs him more to pin the buck, the pack will turn against him and against thee. They will hold a jungle council at the rock, and then, I have it, said Bagheera, leaping up. Go thou down quickly to the men's hut in the valley, and take some red flour which they grow there, so that when the time comes, thou mayest have the strongest friend, and that I, or Baloo, and those of the pack that love thee, get the red flour. By red flour, Bagheera meant fire. Only no creature in the jungle will call fire by its proper name. Every beast lives in deadly fear of it, and invents 100 ways of describing it. The red flour, said Mowgli, that grows outside the huts in the twilight. I will get some. There speaks the man's cub, said Bagheera proudly. Remember that it grows in little pots. Get one swiftly, and keep it by thee for time of need. Good, said Mowgli. I go. Be art thou sure? Oh, my Bagheera. He slipped his arm round the splendid neck and looked deep into the big eyes. Art thou sure that all this is Shere Khan's doing? By the broken lock that freed me, I am sure, little brother. Then, by the bull that bought me, I will pay Shere Khan full tale for this, and it may be a little over, said Mowgli as he bounded away. That is a man, that is all a man, said Bagheera to himself, lying down. O Shere Khan, never was a blacker hunting than a frog hunt of thine 10 years ago. Mowgli was far and far through the forest, running hard, and his heart was hot in him. He came to the cave as the evening mist rose, and drew breath, and looked down the valley. The cubs were out, but Mother Wolf at the back of her cave knew by his breathing that something was troubling her frog. What is it, son? She said. Some back chatter of Shere Khan, he called back. I hunt among the ploughed fields tonight. And he plunged downward through the bushes to the stream at the bottom of the valley. There he checked, for he heard the yell of the packs hunting, heard the bellow of the hunted Sambur, and the snort as the buck turned at bay. Then there were wicked, bitter howls from the young wolves. Woo! Woo! Akela! Akela! Let the lone wolf show his strength. Room for the lead of the pack. Spring, Akela! The lone wolf must have sprung and missed his hold, for Mowgli heard the snap of his teeth, and then a yelp, woo, as the Sambur knocked him over with his forefoot. He did not want anything more, but dashed on, and the yells grew fainter and fainter behind him as he ran into the croplands where the villagers lived. Bagheera spoke the truth, he panted, as he nestled down in some cattle fodder by the window of a hut. Tomorrow is one day both for Akela and for me. Then he pressed his face close to the window and watched the fire on the hearth. He saw the husband's wife get up and the feet in the night with black lumps. And when the morning came and the mists were all white and cold, he saw the man's child pick up a wicker pot, plastered inside with earth, fill it with lumps of red-hot charcoal, put it under his blanket, and go out to tend the cows in the byre. "Is that all?" said Mowgli. "If a cub can do it, there is nothing to fear." He strode around the corner and met the boy, took the pot from his hand, and disappeared into the mist while the boy howled with fear. "Ah!" "They are very like me," said Mowgli, blowing it into the pot, as he had seen the woman do. "This thing will die if I do not give it something to eat." And he dropped figs and dried bark on the red stuff. Halfway up the hill, he met Bagheera with morning dew shining like moonstones on his coat.